We are April and Scott, creators of NaughtyGym.com, and this is The Naughty Gym Show.
For years, we've been fitness and nutrition coaches to thousands of people through our commercial gyms and online platform. We've also spent nearly a decade in an ever-evolving open relationship.
This show brings together two of our biggest passions, fitness and sex positivity. Our mission is to maximize the physical and mental health of anyone brave enough to explore relationship structures that run counter to societal norms.
We have demolished our old ways of thinking about relationships, and from that rubble, built a life full of happiness, adventure, and vitality. And now we want to help you do the same.
So hop on the treadmill, start the show, and let us teach you how to never stop playing. Welcome back to the Naughty Gym Show. I'm your host, April, and this is my beautiful partner, Scott, who is also co-hosting with me today. Yeah, you're welcome.
New position for me, I guess.
We have a very special guest with us. We have Dr. Rachael Meir. She is a Stanford-trained psychologist and sex and relationship coach. She is also the author of the book, 50 Questions to Ask Before Opening Your Relationship. And most recently, she is the host of the retreats for Throuples, right? Thriving throuple couples or thriving throuple relationships.
Thriving Throuples retreat.
That's hard to say.
Thriving Throuples.
Thriving Throuples retreat.
Which is what we're going to be talking about today. Is the book and Throuples stuff. So
Yeah,
welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk with you both, and I love all the work that you do.
Thank you. Well, so we first saw, I think on social media, kind of ran across you and the throuple relationship that you're in now. And we're going to talk about that and have a lot of questions about throupleness here in a little bit. But first, we want to go through some things about your book, because this is not something that I realized was out there, which is a book that has a bunch of questions you should ask yourself before you should consider opening your relationship, which I think is a gap that needed filled in the non-monogamy space.
Yeah. And we get a lot of questions from people asking, like, how do I talk to my partner? What should I ask my partner? So this is just a perfect manual for anybody that is thinking about opening the relationship or has just newly opened the relationship.
And it's so funny because all the people at my retreat literally said, if only I'd had this at the time that I made this decision, it would have been so helpful.
Yeah.
So it's good
Yeah.
to hear.
Well, obviously we can't go through all 50 of the questions on this podcast, but you've been kind enough to pull a sample of 5 questions out that you felt like are really important questions. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask each one or bring each question up and then maybe give you about 3 minutes or so, may not take that long, just to kind of highlight why that particular question is so important for people to navigate. But we'll start with question number 1 in the book was the first one you sent us, which is what desires and needs do I have that I believe non-monogamy might fulfill? So talk us through why, especially that being number 1, I'm sure that has a special place in your heart. Why is that one so important?
At the end of the day, boiling it down to your own personal motivations and knowing your why is so important. I think a lot of times, especially in established couples, you find one of the partners is the one who may approach someone else. They've been thinking about it. It's something that they've been thinking about or something that they've been exploring for themselves. And you'll maybe feel coerced or pressured or obligated, or it's like this fear that I'm going to lose my partner if I don't do this thing. And even though that might be the initial way that it starts or the conversations are broached, still digging deep to say, even if I were to do this because my partner asked me or because this was presented to me when I wasn't even thinking about it to begin with, if I can find motivation internally that's still going to serve a purpose for me, then overall, I think across the board, you're going to have a better experience. And so much of our conditioning, the beliefs that we're taught around sex and love and relationships is all in this sort of heteronormative, monogamous culture. Find your one, find your soulmate, live forever. And it doesn't have to be that way, but we're also not given many other examples or role models through media or wherever we're just, again, conditioned to sort of see what a healthy relationship looks like. But in reality, can one person really fill everyone's needs 100% of the time? No, absolutely not. Could it be sufficient? Sure. And we have a lot of healthy couples that live in monogamous relationships. But if you want diversity, or you want to explore your sexuality, or maybe you want greater intimacy with more than one person, or you want to just experience personal growth or better communication, there can be all kinds of things that non-monogamy may offer, but we don't even know that's an option on the table for many people. And so that first question really helps people dig a little bit deeper and say, okay, if I consider this, not that I have to, but why might I want to do it? And even if you conclude at the end of the day that I want to support my partner's happiness and their autonomy and their individuality, and I don't have to necessarily have any other partners or be non-monogamous myself, I can still get behind encouraging my partner to do something that's important to them.
Do you see that work a lot where one person in a couple wants to be non-monogamous, the other one doesn't really want to be, but in order to let them have what they want, they sort of just agree to it? I don't know if begrudgingly is the right word. Probably if they do it begrudgingly, it's going to turn out bad, I'm assuming. But do you see that ever works out real well with one person participating and the other one not?
I do. And I think part of it is when you really do get clear on how this could be beneficial to you. And it's related to some of the other questions that I had sent to you, but a lot of the way I see a lot of couples work is they feel sort of dependent upon one another, or they grow up together, or they have such a long-standing relationship that they do a lot of things together. And if we're going to go out with friends, we do it together. If we're going to go watch a movie, we do it together. If we're going to do vacations, we do it together. But if you can differentiate yourself and actually look at two individuals who happen to do really well in a lot of situations and do enjoy their company, but don't have to spend their time together, and know that they are okay in sort of a paradoxical form, having more separation, the heart grows fonder, you actually want to spend that time, it doesn't come out of obligation. And the healthiest couples that absolutely can do sort of that open poly or open mono kind of dynamic can, but it has to come from knowing that I'm still safe, I'm still secure, I'm not being left for someone else because I'm not good enough, any of the insecurities or fears that might arise. But you have to do a lot of personal work to get there.
Yeah. Well, and I think that brings us to the second question that you had sent us, which I love, is asking yourself, do I have a healthy self-confidence, high self-esteem, and a strong sense of self-worth? Which is, I mean, just the foundation of if you're going to be able to open your relationship, that is essential.
100%. And so many people say, I'm too jealous, I could never do that. They have all of these fears that come up. And those that say it, I do believe much of that stems from low self-esteem, those insecurities. And when you can boost that, or you can change it, then the fear of being left, or fear of abandonment, or not good enough, and the comparison traps, and sort of all of these things that when you're in a monogamous relationship, it's this sort of false sense of security that you're okay. In all reality, at any point, someone could leave someone. But if you're intentional about opening your relationship, all of a sudden that reality is actually there, just heightens all of those fears. But if you can do that.
You said that about you mentioned the thing about jealousy, and I've never really asked anybody this question, but I think I know the answer partly, but if somebody, a lot of people say that, I'm just too jealous, I could never do what you guys do. Is that ever actually true? Is there a genetic predisposition towards jealousy, or is jealousy always something that if you really wanted to work through it and be less negatively affected by it, you could?
I don't know if I know off the top of my head, like the stats or the evidence on a genetic predisposition, but you certainly do see, and there's a psychologist, I'm totally blanking on her name right now, but if I get it, I'll try to come back. We could always put it in the show notes, who actually talks about this and sort of on a personality spectrum, and that there are definitely differences in whether that's related to attachment issues, your upbringing, different traumas or experiences that you've undergone, maybe capacity to experience more jealousy. I don't know if capacity is the right word, but the likelihood of experiencing more jealousy might certainly be increased. Does that mean it's impossible to overcome? No, I don't think that at all. I just think that a lot of people think I'm too jealous, and they use that I am. rather than I experience jealousy at certain times for these reasons. And I use sort of an analogy with my clients of like a relationship dashboard warning. If you're driving a car, you have all these indicator lights and a light might come on. It doesn't mean your car's breaking down, but it might mean that your brakes need checking, or you need more oil, or you need to fill up your gas. But until we do kind of a deeper dive and an analysis of what is triggering just the warning light, you're not going to really know how to solve the issue. And so same thing, I'm jealous is just this kind of catch-all term for what? For insecurity, for fear, for it's some sort of threat the brain is just trying to protect yourself from. But if you can
Right.
say, I have a excellent loving relationship, I am proud, I am confident in who I am, this is just an addition to, not something that's taken away from me.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that you're saying that in order to open your relationship, you have to have all of those very high self-esteem, strong sense of self-worth, healthy self-confidence, just the self-awareness that those issues will stem from not having those. And then there's some work that maybe needs to be done to get to that point.
Absolutely. And that work does happen or does make changes for people, and
Right.
whether it's self-help, and there's so much out there, or going to therapy. I mean, it might be a place that you really do need some added support, but it can absolutely change.
All right, well, let's go to question 3. It's there's question 12 in the book, but do we each possess a strong sense of self and remain differentiated in our partnership? Now, that differentiated word is something I've seen a lot lately, and I think it's an important topic because I know growing up, if you would have asked me, this was long before I knew anything about open relationships or really anything about relationships in general, but I would have told you different. If I would have understood that word, I would have said that's probably dangerous for a couple. You know, they need to move together. They need to go to things together, have the same friends, that sort of thing. And I've done a complete 180 on that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with people having common interests and common friends, but talk about the importance, why that's so important to have a differentiation between the two individuals in a coupleship.
Because it speaks to that knowing of yourself and really knowing who you are. And so many of us, I think, over time in monogamous relationships, adapt to meet the needs of our partner. We've used this example all the time in our relationship. When Aaron and I were first together, he loves sports and football and all of the things. And sure, I would go to the games. I'd watch him on Sunday. He wanted a companion if he didn't have the buddies to go out with or whatnot. I would do it because I love him, but I gave a shit less. Like, I really don't care about watching sports. Casey comes into the picture and she loves it, and she's a huge football fan. Like, now they actually can bond and they can talk intellectually around things that I would never have been able to provide. And I can go to my yoga retreat, or I can do what I actually want to do that's so much more impactful for me. But it
Takes a
just
load
right.
off of you.
Totally right. And you don't have that pressure of carrying the weight for everyone else. And so I use it like a Venn diagram. And so it's Rachel and it's Aaron and how much overlap, but we can still be our own people on the outside, do the things that we really enjoy together. And if you have other people, they're just going to, add those circles in, but it doesn't mean anyone has to be completely separated on the outside.
But what do you say to people that think the way I used to think, that that's dangerous? It's inherently dangerous to try to form this unit, but at the same time, keep all of these separate parts. I don't know. It just feels dangerous to some people, especially traditional people.
And I think that's where it's actually the opposite, because that kind of mindset might be more of a breeding ground for like codependency, and the couples that really do experience a lot of anxiety or intense emotions of some sort when they're not with their partner, or this feeling of like, I could never live without my partner. And what happens if they were to die, or they don't have that internal confidence or stability or security. I think it really actually causes potentially more detriment. And so then it is really being able to be intentional around the time that you spend together. Know that you've got safety and security because you want to be together, not because you're trying to control aspects to make sure we never leave each other, never lose each other. It's again sort of this intentional, you're in charge, it's empowering, versus feeling like you're at risk and have to tightly manage or restrict everything.
All right. Well, let's go to question 4, which is actually question 16.
So we got 2 more, and then we'll move on to the throuples stuff.
Are we seeking an open relationship to fill a void or fix an existing problem? And I think anybody who has been in a non-monogamous relationship and has their families found out, or they tell their friends, they have also been asked this question. Well, what's wrong with your relationship?
Exactly, because it's like if it's not good enough between the two of you, then inherently there must be a problem. That's sort of the false belief set, I think, of couples that do it well, that others think that because they're obviously not the ones doing it. But then I have seen the couples that open up because there are problems and they think this is going to be the Band-Aid that will fix it. So you have to know that first for yourselves. And I think there's a big difference of identifying issues, let's say a desire discrepancy or a difference in sexual interests. And you've acknowledged it, you've tried to meet love languages, you've tried to explore because you're open to it to see if I can meet someone's needs. And at the end of the day, someone is super into BDSM and someone else wants more of a vanilla relationship. And as much as I love you, I just can't provide that for you. Okay, now we will explore potentially an open relationship so that you get that need met in some capacity that I just don't want or am able to provide to you is different than my wife never wants to have sex with me, so I'm going to go find a partner because she won't do it, when really she's missing the emotional connection, or you haven't had some sort of discussion around what her needs are that might open up her physical space to you, right? And so it's really just getting clear on what are our issues, what have we tried, and could this be a solution to help combat that?
Yeah. And that again is something where if you are thinking about opening your relationship and you have these underlying issues that you think it will fix, it won't, number one, but that's the time maybe you do need to talk to a professional or a therapist or, somebody who can help work through those underlying issues, maybe the emotional absence or something like that.
Right. Because if you have a stronger foundation between the two of you, then opening up is going to be significantly easier.
Yeah. It's like having a baby to save your marriage. It's not going to work.
and all of those issues that if you're in that situation thinking non-monogamy or opening up might fill a void or fix a problem, whatever those underlying problems are in the monogamy part of your relationship are going to be like problems with gasoline poured on them when you open up. They're going to get way worse.
100% true. Yes.
All right. Last question before we move on to talking about throuples. How do we envision ethical non-monogamy impacting our existing relationship? And this is a good one for people that have never opened up, because that's not even something they think about. They think this is, I think most people, this is just a feral, I need to fuck somebody else kind of thing. And they don't understand when you start trying to talk about all of the benefits that come into your primary relationship because you've opened up. That is difficult to explain to somebody on the outside.
And these are things that Aaron and I did a lot of work. We had listened to podcasts, read books. We were in the groups, and you hear about certain things, but really thinking like, how is this going to, for the good or the bad, potentially, or I don't even want to say bad, but it's definitely going to alter or shift what we've always known, and could not have even anticipated some of the things that come up. But recognizing there might be some aspects of kind of your sacred union, things that are important to you that you don't want to lose sight of. So no matter what happens, we always want to have our standing date at whatever. I don't know. There might be something that's just really important and special to you. But at the same time, okay, so we've always watched sports together. If we find someone new, maybe this is somewhere that we can separate ourselves or do something different. How are we going to manage scheduling with 3 or more people? How are we going to tackle we sort of laugh because Aaron and I were always the early morning gym goers. We'd be up at 4:35 in the morning. That's never going to fly with Casey anymore. Are we willing to adjust our schedules if going to the gym is still important? Sure, but does it have to be at 6 a.m.? Maybe not. And just, sort of anticipating that things can change. And are you okay with that?
Well, that kind of brings us to what we really were here to talk about today, and that's this dynamic of being in a throuple, which you are currently, but you didn't start that way, right? So kind of walk us through the process. You, at some point in the past, you opened your primary relationship up, and then after some amount of time, it went from the 2 of you to the 3 of you. So kind of walk us through how that all played out for you.
So Aaron and I met when we were 18 in college, and for all practical purposes, we were each other's first relationship, and it stayed that way till we got married at age 25. And at that point, we had always talked about threesomes. It was definitely something like watching different porn clips and whatnot was an interest of both of ours, and certainly it was a time that I at least accepted. I don't know if I ever didn't, but I knew that there was a bisexual identity for me. But the reality of having a threesome seemed so far-fetched. I was like, how do you do that? Are you going to walk up to some girl in the bar and like ask her to come home? It didn't seem like something that me, shy, or self-confidence at that time, Rachel would have done. And so for 7 years, it was always in the fantasy realm in our minds. And then we came across, I don't know if you guys know Cassidy.com, one of the swingers websites. And all of a sudden I was like, there is literally a world for this. Real people exist. And so we went to Scarlet Ranch, which was a swingers resort in Colorado where we were living at the time. And again, it was just kind of this mind-blowing experience. And for a while, just had fun in the lifestyle, and it was casual. And I got the chance to explore my sexuality through that community is where we learned about polyamory. And we actually met triads and quads and people in relationships, buying houses together, raising families together. And I was like, you can do this with more than two people. Again, just kind of these mind-blowing experiences. And I said, that's the best of both worlds. Aaron's wonderful. He's amazing. I've always loved him. We have a great relationship. But if I can have that with a woman too, why not? And so we were actually pretty intentional. We put dating profiles up on dating apps saying that we were intentionally seeking this kind of relationship with a woman in an equitable, fair way, prepared to have a non-hierarchical relationship, and had done a lot of our research and learning going into that experience.
How long did that process take from where you go to these places where you're seeing, all of a sudden you're seeing throuples and quads and before you went from that to, you know what, I think we want to do this? Because that's a much more emotional, much more involved relationship than just say swinging or going, and hooking up with another couple or something.
I think we probably met our first triad or quad a couple years prior to that. But then I think it was just seen more in the media, starting to actually just hear podcasts, or we actually met someone, I'm forgetting all the details of the story, but it just got into my mind like, okay, this is actually feasible. It's something that we could put into motion. And it was about February of 2019 that I do remember creating the dating app profiles, and we met Casey in August of 2019.
You said you guys have a non-hierarchical relationship, so that and I don't know we're not polyamorous savvy as far as the terminology, but all three of you have an equal, I guess, I don't know, equal is the right word, but you all three have a relationship in every combination, I guess, so you could lay it out.
Correct. So we look at it as 4 relationships. So Aaron and I have our 20 plus years, 25 years now together, but when we met Casey, it was about 20 years. You can't undo. And so there is definitely an inequality in terms of the time, but we try to make it as equitable, because then there are 3 new relationships between me and Casey and Aaron, and the triad as a whole. And those are all having to be cultivated and fostered and put effort into at the same time frame, but they're all going to be different. And so it is really looking at equality versus equity. But at any point, all of us have equal decision-making capacity. We do things jointly. We share a joint checking account. Aaron and I knew going into it, at any point, if this isn't working, it's not a given that it's just going to be us going back to monogamy. He might fall in love with her and I might want out. The two of us Casey and I may choose that we no longer want a male, who knows, but we were open to any potential changes like that happening. Hopefully not. The goal is not to have that happen, but it wasn't just no matter what, we're going to preserve our primary marriage.
Yeah, I think that's the scariest part for me is, and I'm sure a lot of this is just cultural inundation of the way things are, quote, supposed to be. But I can say I feel confident in us having an open relationship of almost any variety, as long as I feel confident she and I are good and are committed to each other. Now, there's a side of me that also can understand taking a different approach, like going, hey, it's obviously not guaranteed that me and her are going to be together tomorrow. But I almost have to sort of try to trick myself into believing that it's a guarantee, even though I know it's not, before I can feel comfortable with the open stuff. Or at least that's how I've approached it. And I'm trying to move my thought process away from that, but that's how I've approached it.
And to some extent, that's what marriage gives people, right? The security that we've signed a legal agreement, a binding agreement. So we're going to be together forever. And I think when you can make that shift, and it really is just such a sort of a paradox of I feel incredibly secure with Aaron because I know he loves me. I know I love him. I don't want that to change. And as long as I show up as an ideal partner for him and him to me, whether it's written in stone with a marriage license or we just say it to each other, doesn't make a difference to me. And I'd much rather have a partner who wants to be with me rather than one who's like chained to me just because we signed something.
Right.
And I think that's just the mentality that you have to go into. And if things start to shift or you start to find some distance, is exploring, well, why is that happening? Doesn't mean it's an end all be all catastrophic event, but clearly there's an unmet need or something has shifted. And are we willing to work through it and put in the effort?
Do you think that it's made you, and I don't know how it could not have, but more intentional with everything in your in all of the relationships? You have to be incredibly, because you're right, marriage, and we are, people hate when I say this, but I'm anti-marriage, established marriage.
We've got more hate
really
mail
bad hate
about her saying stuff like that.
Because I want to choose him every day, and there's no piece of paper that's going to make me choose him, right? I mean, it's just foolish to even think that. But how do you, do you guys have weekly meetings? Are there, like, how much intentionality goes into that structure?
Early on, especially, we had weekly, if not bi-weekly meetings. We called them book clubs, our relationship book clubs. And we would come as all three, and we had a structured list of questions, starting with all of our affirmations and celebrating the wins, as small as they were. But if there was something that we were making progress towards or feeling good about, we would acknowledge all of that. We would check in on communication, on intimacy, on just whatever sort of topics needed to be addressed. And then we would close with, again, some sort of grounding connection. We're in this together, even through all the hardships and the challenges. Aaron and Casey actually had separate dyad, the two-person, because their relationship was growing at a different rate than, say, mine and Casey's. And so they met to figure out what kind of issues were coming up and how they could solve that. And that went on for a good 2 or 3 years, pretty consistently, at least between the triad. And then over time, we've become obviously much more stable and established. But I would say we have a check-in even now at 6.5 years, close to monthly, maybe quarterly, sometimes monthly, depending on what's coming up. And Casey and I actually just started our own couples therapy a couple months ago. We've never done it together as a dyad, and we sort of hit a plateau, highlighted some new issues. Doesn't mean we're going to break up, but let's just explore that a little bit more. And it's been phenomenal.
That's so great.
I think we need to start having, I think all relationships should have a book club meeting once a week.
Oh, I agree.
Like some mandatory questions you have to ask.
Yeah, of course.
Otherwise, you just go with the flow and you assume, and there's a lot of implicit assumptions that are being made versus really, let's just talk it out. Let's be clear. Let's have a goal together.
Well, so you met in college, and then you guys started exploring swinging, essentially, and then eventually polyamory. But you also got a degree and a PhD in psychology. And as I don't know if you set out initially to specialize in kind of alternative relationship structures and sex positivity and that sort of thing, but that's what your focus is now. So how did that process happen? Were you traditional at first and then made a move, or was it always sex positive from the beginning?
No, I actually thought I was going to be a pediatrician when I first went to school. And then for reasons not related here, but ended up shifting, went to psychology. My initial work was just a very generalist clinical psychologist. In the medical psychology, health psychology field, I worked at a hospital for a while and just had seen sort of everything under the sun. And when Aaron and I actually decided to move to Mexico in 2017, it was after like burnout, and we both were exhausted, lived as expats in Mexico for a while. And this was during the time that we actually put up the dating app profiles, and connected with Casey during a visit back to the States when we were supposed to be going back to Mexico a month later. Met with her, connected 12 days after meeting Casey, made the decision that we would give this relationship a try. So we moved back from Mexico to the United States after 12 days of knowing Casey.
Wow.
Wow.
Got a
Wait a
little bit
minute.
of everything.
Before you continue, why were you in Mexico to begin?
We just got sick of the rat race, got sick of living in the US, wanted a slower pace of life, and quit everything and moved to Mexico. It was amazing. And I swore I was never coming back. We met a girl. And so we did, and we came back and COVID hit. And so we basically were here by December of 2019. COVID hit in March of 2020. We all got locked down together. And so I decided to bring my license back. I had never given up my license when I moved to Mexico, but I decided to open a private practice. And since I had through that time the experience in the swinging lifestyle, and then obviously this new relationship, and realizing 6 months into it, holy shit, this is hard, even with all of the stuff that I've been trained in, communication and emotional well-being and relation and attachment stuff, like it just blew my mind how hard it was. I was like, there's definitely a need here, so I'll start to focus my clientele in that direction. And then it was horrible how many clients actually came to me saying, I'm so glad I found you, because my previous therapist actually told me just go back to monogamy. Non-monogamy or polyamory is the problem, and if you go back to monogamy, you'll be fine. And that just made my heart sink, and I really was able to build a pretty wonderful business just with a need that's out there.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Was that pretty easy to, because you, in some ways, there are other people like you out there doing this kind of work, but it's definitely not common, mainstream or common. Was it hard getting your footing, being a psychologist specializing in open relationships and that sort of thing, or did they just come beating down the door?
No, especially in COVID and when we went to virtual therapy, I was so fortunate. It was one of the, I just literally could not keep up with the referrals and the people seeking me out. But I think it's pretty rare to see someone with a clinical degree or expertise putting themselves out in the personal. So having that combination of not just being open-minded to or affirming of, but actually the lived experience, I think made it a pretty, kind of incredible combination for people to feel safe.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, you talked about how hard it can be, making this transition. If anybody should know how to do it, it's you, right? So talk about that, because it sounds like a dream scenario sometimes. Oh yeah, we've got a third now, and she can watch sports with me, and y'all can go get your nails done, and all these things that you imagine in your head, but it just isn't that easy. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, a professional perspective. What are the things you see the most that people struggle with in a triad or a throuple that maybe you don't see in just a standard swinging type relationship?
Yeah, I think when you shift from the casual connections where you see people infrequently, usually just at a party, but you're not building relationships, you're not having to communicate on a daily basis or regular standing basis, you're not having to really work through conflicts in a very intentional way. All of a sudden, those big feelings, big emotions, understanding different communication patterns, conflict resolution styles, just negotiating on anything, all of a sudden more than two. It's with two people, it's kind of just this like who can tug the rope a little bit further and win in that kind of situation. A lot of times you have three people all with different interests or different ways of relating. We had some of our biggest blowouts I have never experienced. Aaron and I are both more passive. Probably now I realize we were avoidant and we just didn't address the issue and somehow moved past it and it was fine. Casey comes in like a tornado and she comes from a screaming household, with just a whole different style. We lost so much sleep. It was awful. Yeah. And just, but the big emotions, she also had come from a previous relationship that fell into place, kind of a triad, but in a very unhealthy way because no one was intentional about it and didn't do the work. But she had a ton of abandonment issues a ton of abandonment issues having been left by a couple. She was one that was just a play toy for a little while and then disposed of when it no longer worked for them. And so just working through a lot of those underlying fears and really, again, going back to your why and your motivation, because there will be challenges you just cannot anticipate. You have to know that you're strong enough, you want this badly enough to work through it to get to the other side.
What are some common misconceptions that you've found that people have about throuples?
It must be the guy. He's definitely the one that wanted it and, forced his wife to do it. And he must be well hung or well endowed or lots of money to convince or to, he's the king, that it's all about sex, that, um, that we're weird, that we're going to hell, that, everything on the bad side that's definitely abnormal and taboo.
You're definitely going to hell. I don't know about the other ones, but yeah, you have no shot.
I think it's going to be a great party. All the time.
Right. We'll be there too.
Well, especially the thing about the man must have wanted this when it's two women and a man, when that's the throuple dynamic, it just is always going to look like that to people from the outside. But they miss the fact that some of these triads are two men and a woman, or maybe three men or three women.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually know a throuple that's three women.
Yeah.
Or I guess that there's a monogamy, that the third is just kind of a third wheel, right? Like that, like you said, that's just kind of your plaything, or, where you're monogamous with each other, but you kind of add a third in every once in a while.
Yeah, because I would imagine it's not only difficult, but arguably unethical if you bring a person in to your life, a third, and treat them as as icing on your relational cake. And as soon as the flavor starts to wear out and maybe it starts to get aggravating, you're like, well, you were just icing anyway. We don't need you. That just feels icky and problematic. And I think I can imagine that being the case a lot of times.
And that is, and you hear these terms of like unicorn hunters, because finding that, especially when it is two women and a man, that this sort of mythical creature of the unicorn is so hard to find. And then couples privilege is something that comes into play. So they're the established couple, and it's kind of their right to go back to monogamy if they want, or if this isn't working for them, that this, again, mythical creature has to somehow fit in. And as long as you're good for both of us, and yeah, it's super icky, and that's not in any way healthy or ethical. So that, again, comes back to all those questions that I have in the book is, can you separate yourself? Can you show up as three individuals? It's no longer we plus you, it's I, and I. The term, even the third, automatically puts someone at a lower ranking. So it's a new partner. We all come as partners together, not, husband, wife, and the third, or long-term established, partners. It's just, I'm Rachel, this is Aaron, and now Casey's someone that we're all getting to know.
Yeah. I'm guessing there's got to be different ways to structure that. Like your relationship is a hierarchical where you have joint bank accounts, you all have, equal say. Are there other ways to structure a throuple that like that? See, I don't know, kitchen table poly, I guess, is what some people would call that, where everybody shares bills, everybody shares everything, everybody lives together kind of thing.
Yeah. Our dynamic is a non-hierarchical closed.
Or I'm sorry, non-hierarchical.
Yeah. Closed polyamorous triad. That's what we've chosen. That's what works for us. But you'll see all kinds of different dynamics, and there's definitely nothing wrong with hierarchy. And there are primary because that's what they prefer, established couples who are seeking still companionship with, or want to have that triad or throuple dynamic, but it's very clear what the roles, what the responsibilities are. Maybe they have kids and they're going to say, no matter what, our priority is going to be to our kids, or we do celebrate the holidays that we always have. As long as those things are communicated to another partner or multiple people, and everyone is bought in, everyone's in agreement, it works for them. Because there might be another at the retreat, we actually had an open throuple who the additional partner also has her own nesting partner. So she doesn't have a desire necessarily to move in and be in a non-hierarchical situation, but she still wants that triad dynamic. And you can have V relationships where maybe there's a hinge. Let's say April, you and Scott are together, but maybe Scott has a girlfriend of his own per se, but even April and the girlfriend may not have a romantic or sexual connection, but you can still be three people that interact, and you have the negotiations around the split in time or how that looks. Yeah. You might not live together. There's all kinds of, it's just about communicating what everyone wants. And again, do those circles overlap in a Venn diagram in a way that works for everyone?
One of the things you mentioned, April and I have been working on this book for a while. One of the things I've read about polyamorous relationships, some people in the polyamory world would, I guess, disagree with the statement you made a minute ago that it's okay to have a hierarchical relationship. And I agree with that. Although I think a hierarchical relationship can also be unethical, depending on how it's handled.
Right. Right.
But you also mentioned something earlier about how, you guys you've got in your triad, you have an established relationship of 25 years of history, relationship building over the course of 2.5 decades. And then you have this newer relationship with the person coming in recently or relatively recently. And it almost feels like you addressed it by saying that there's an inequity there. Naturally, you can't help it because there's no way to just come in and be completely equal from day one. That's probably unrealistic. What's the difference between inequity and hierarchy? Because they almost seem like interchangeable words to me.
So I think it's more around, to me, it's more around defining the roles and who's a primary decision maker or how are decisions made. At any point, does someone feel like they're going to be cast off or lower in the totem pole or lower in the priority, and they don't want that? Or it also goes to the equality versus equity sort of confusion. So the equality or the equity, it's not equal that we have the different time frame, but from an equitable standpoint, we're going to do as much as we can, given that time is all that we have to work with. We can't be where we were 25 years ago when you meet on day one, but we will put as much attention to building that relationship, no different than Aaron and I did when we were 18. And that's as fair and as balanced as we can get. And now this first holiday season, Christmas and whatever, are we going to do what Aaron and I always did? Or now it's a brand new relationship as a triad that we let go of all the things that we used to do and we start fresh, creating what works for us now with 3 people.
You've recently, not this past weekend, you did your first ever Throuples retreat, which is very interesting for us because we do retreats as well. And we're actually going to be doing one sometime in the spring next year based off of the book we've got coming out. So we think it's incredibly interesting that you've built a retreat specifically for people in Throuples. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how that came up, how that worked out, and how it went this past weekend. Because I know when before we started the show, you said it went great, and then we didn't want to talk about it because we want to talk about it now. So tell us how that went, how that came up, all that good stuff.
Well, part of it is just having gone to several retreats myself. I've never seen one that is geared towards 3, especially 3-person. There might be other forums where you can have multiple partners or more in the swinging lifestyle, but a traditional relationship retreat is built around 2, and it's built with a couple, and all the exercises and anything that you're going to be doing together is with 2 people. And as a throuple, just fitting into day-to-day life, you're always navigating a 2-person sort of mentality, whether it's how many people can check into a hotel with a king bed. A lot of times we get some sort of pushback even to check in as 3 because it's accommodating just 2, right? So I was so excited to say, we're going to create a retreat specifically for 3, and everything that we do has some sort of intention that it is designed for 3. So every villa that I got had king beds for everyone. It had 3 towels in it. It had 3 robes in it. It had a playlist made of songs with non-monogamy and polyamory and 3 songs. And our conversations were all about the throuple dynamic, not just relationships in general. So many throuples and triads that I know have never even interacted with someone else in that same relationship dynamic beyond social media, if even that. And so to be exposed to and in the same room with 9 triads, 27 people, all living a pretty similar life. There were some different dynamics, different configurations of gender, but the commonalities of the struggles and the timeline that you overcome a lot of those challenges was just, I think, mind-blowing, but also so reassuring to so many, and especially those early years. And there's such a commonality, those 1 to 2.5, pushing 3 years, I think for everyone is just incredibly challenging, but they were able to also see several groups who were beyond that 3-year mark, and all of a sudden things just seemed to shift and change, and I think it gave them a lot of confidence and hope.
What is it about that 2 to 3 year mark that becomes so tough?
I think up until maybe the 2 to 3 year mark.
Oh, okay. Getting
Yeah.
past that. Okay.
Right. Just, I mean, you're overcoming just again a new relationship, but it's sort of different because, like in our situation, for example, Casey and I for sure had the NRE, the new relationship energy. And even though there was an initial bond and a connection between all three of us, which we recognize as rare, I think there was something that was heightened with Casey and I. And so I might have been pushing that train faster than Aaron was ready. There's a dynamic between the two of them that created some tension early on. Then we're exposed to, in that situation for us, the COVID pandemic, but there might be some other environmental circumstances coming out to family and friends if you choose to do so. Then you get all the judgment and the stigma, and it's just one barrier and one battle after another while you're still trying to live this high of a new relationship or figure out the configuration after 20 years of doing something differently. And it's just hard. I think it takes time, takes finding yourself, finding that security, that balance. And at some point, it just feels like, okay, we've actually been doing this. Things are calming down, and now we can enjoy it a little bit more. For us, we had our commitment ceremony in 23. Yeah, so that was about 4 years, but we proposed at about 3 years to Casey. And I think once we had that commitment ceremony and our friends and our family all came to see like, we are doing this. It's really serious. Everything just shifted in a much more.
So are you and Aaron still married?
We are still legally married, which does beg the question in terms of the hierarchy, which we could talk about. But yes, we are legally married, and you obviously can't marry more than one person in the United States.
Right. Yeah. That must, at your retreat, I can only imagine how good that felt for everybody to see other people in that same situation, because I'm sure they feel like such an island. And there is not just a ton of information out there for throuples, or even in the polyamory world. It's just now starting to get a little more saturated. But I mean, when we do even our couples retreats, and that's super common now, people are like, oh my God, there's other people like me. So what a great thing for you to be doing.
I love it. I'm really excited. The next one's already coming in May and June of next year. So
good. Well, we'll definitely put that in our show notes too, links to your website, so that people that are looking for something can connect with you as well.
Yeah, I know when we go to hedonism, the minute we walk, I think you feel the same way, but as soon as we get in the lobby and drop our suitcases off, it feels like the weight of the world just leaves, because now I know I'm somewhere where I can be completely authentic. I don't have to hide who I am, and I'm not going to get negative kickback for it. And it just feels like such a huge relief. And for somebody like that, like April was just saying, they can go to Hedo and have a good time, but they're still going to they're going to feel a little different, because they're likely to be the only one there on the resort, or maybe there's one or two others there. But to go to a place like what you've set up, where every single person in there can really relate to their lived experience, has got to feel like a breath
they
of
also
fresh
feel
air.
normal and not like the
Right.
outside. There's no one
Yeah.
else that's different than them. Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it went well, we're assuming?
It went so well. Yeah, I'm so grateful, and everyone gave just such amazing feedback, and they just felt seen and loved and supported, and it really almost brought me to tears. I could not have asked for anything more.
Yeah, those are our favorite ones. Well, I say our favorite. There's just something magical about having a group that size where you can really get to know everybody there, all under the same roof for days at a time, and getting to know each other, kind of struggling, celebrating, all that stuff together. And when you get to the end of an event like that, it really is tough to say goodbye to everybody.
And then they have these connections to carry with them.
Exactly. Right. We had a WhatsApp group thread. They all exchanged information. They're already planning meetups. So that's really cool that we fostered that kind of relationships. Yeah.
Good for you.
Oh,
And
and you guys will love it. We did 3-person partner yoga.
Did you?
The yoga instructor actually came and did sort of, what's the, not acrobatic.
Acro yoga?
Like kind of acro yoga stuff. Basic, simple, but it was so fun. It was all about trust building and intentional connection with 3 people. Again, it was just awesome.
Well, I would assume they probably had to build that from scratch. I don't know that there's a already established 3-person.
Well, I think
yoga
most
program.
of this really has to be built from scratch, right? I mean, this is.
Yeah, when I was seeking out my vendors, I had this vision and made sure that they caught it and knew what to serve up.
Amazing. Do you have dates for your next retreat yet?
May 14th through the 17th, and I believe it's going to be June 18th through the 21st.
Okay, and where are they at?
They're both going to be St. Pete, same
Okay.
location, is
Perfect.
on the beautiful beaches here in Florida.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, for anybody that is wanting to find out more about Dr. Rachael Meir, her website is drrachelmeir.com. The book is 50 Questions to Ask Before Opening Your Relationship. And is all the information to your retreats on your website? They can find everything there?
They can't. Right now, just because I got back yesterday, it still says sign here to be on the waiting list, but you can go, you can do it, and then I'll give you all the new information for 2026.
Well, we really appreciate it. And I have 1,000 more questions about your relationship, but I think we'd be on here for 4 hours. So we appreciate your time and answering all these questions for people that.
Thank you. And thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Is there anybody anywhere else other than your website that people can find you?
All the social media platforms, it's at Dr. Rachael Meir Coaching, but Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, for sure.
Okay. Perfect. Well, we'll put all of those in our show notes. So thank you so much for being with us today. And we definitely look forward to talking to you again and picking your brain a little bit more. But for everybody else out there, remember it's drrachelmeir.com and you can find her retreats and her book there and any other information. But for now, remember to never stop playing.